Ladies and gentlemen, hello, greetings, and welcome to the channel. That is I, the family car guy, and we are now driving in the C4 Corvette today. That's what we're doing. I promised that I would make a driving video, and I mean, that's why you buy cars in the first place, is to drive them right, not to just sit there and take pictures of them. That's what we're doing today. So, if you've seen my original video, which talked about how I got my C4, which I'm currently driving right now, you heard the backstory. Got it for $7 grand. Got it from a dealership in Wisconsin. Now, this particular car, as I mentioned before, does have some issues. So we're going to talk through a few of those today, and you know, maybe in the comments, maybe you guys can help me out, help me understand maybe what, you know, what's the best course of action. So one of those issues right off the bat is the weather stripping on this car, all surrounding the back window, the back hatch, and around the even the side, the front windows as well, and where the target top attaches. That all needs to be replaced. There is a website that I remember, I think maybe it's West Coast Corvettes or Mid-America Corvettes or something like that, that actually has the replacement weather stripping that's not too incredibly pricey for how much weather stripping needs to be replaced on this car. Maybe $300, $400, $500 total, so not horrible. So that's one thing. One thing that you'll notice in this car, so like if I accelerate hard, which I won't do now because I'm driving on like a residential street, but we will be getting on the highway in just a minute here, and you'll hear that this car, when you accelerate hard, and it almost feels like something is holding it back. It's kind of weird. It's like, I don't know if it's just the exhaust is old, or if it's you know, the caps are plugged. I don't know, something. I don't know what's going on. Or maybe it's like transmission has got some issues or something like that. God forbid. But you know, I can't say that I'd be incredibly surprised, because even though this car only has 50,000 miles on it, and I bought it with 48,000 miles on it, I did mention that it is a salvage title, and it was, you know, even though it's a one-owner car, do I know how this car was driven? I don't really know. I mean, I imagine it was driven pretty aggressively. I mean, it's in fairly rough shape. I don't know if it's in okay shape. I don't want to say it's in rough shape, but it's in okay shape. But it's definitely not a showroom floor kind of car. It's definitely not a time capsule in terms of how it was maintained. So, I mean, even right now, I don't know if you guys can hear, but there's a significant amount of noise coming from the transmission tunnel, you know, when the car is moving, no matter what gear I'm in, no matter how fast I'm going, and it raises and lowers with the rate of acceleration of the car. So it's like, I don't know exactly what that is, but you can imagine that there's some issues. And it just feels like, you know, this car, it probably could just use a good tune-up. I mean, it did get an oil change right before I bought it, so there's that. But it probably could use a new tune-up, a good tune-up. So yeah, I got to figure that out. I got to figure out a time to get all that stuff done. As many of you may know who are familiar with the C4 Corvette, maybe you're not, the C4 is it runs very, very hot. It gets very, very hot very quickly. I mean, we're talking, you're cruising, so right now I'm driving, I think that coolant temperature is at like 195, which is fine. That's great, you know, nothing wrong with that. But if you are idling in traffic, which if you drive during rush hour, pretty much in any state, but definitely true in the Twin Cities as well, if you're idling in traffic, it is not uncommon for the temperature, the coolant temperature gauge, to shoot up over 230 and even to 240. And this is with the cooling fans going full blast. So, you know, it's definitely got some cooling issues. Now, some of that is just due to the nature of the C4. Some of that is definitely, this thing probably could use a coolant flush. And ultimately, in the spring, you know, we'll see how things go, but I may end up replacing the radiator and upgrading it with a much beefier aftermarket radiator. So here we are. So we're on the highway. So we're going to go ahead and transmission. Moves out pretty good. But yeah, you can definitely hear that little bit of a bark every single time I change gears aggressively, unless I cleanly let out the clutch and then engage the next gear. So yeah, so it's got a few issues. I told you guys about the headlights last time. I gotta get some new headlights just because they're not super bright. I mean, they run fine, and also the motors. It's like you turn off the headlights and the motors keep running for another 10 seconds. It's kind of weird. So some of it, it's to be expected. Some of it is, it's what happens when the risk you take when you buy a car sight unseen and it's 21 years old and so on and so forth. So it is what it is. But overall, all those things considered, this car actually runs pretty well. It really does. Oh, I also forgot to mention, it does have some kind of a leak. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an oil leak. I don't think it's a coolant leak. It is coming from like the front left of the car, like just to the right of the front left tire. So I don't know exactly what that is. I hope it's not an oil leak, but who knows. So things that I gotta get looked at, things that I gotta, get taken care of on this car. Some of it I wouldn't care about as much. But this is, like I said in my previous video, it is a daily drive, so it's like there's some things it's like, okay, you want to really make sure you are getting a good once over on this car by a reputable shop. And that's my advice, honestly. I was going to make another video, and I still will, but that's my advice, definitely. One piece of advice I'd give everyone who's looking at getting the C4, take it to a shop. Even if it's in great shape, take it to a shop, get it looked over, because ultimately you're buying a car that is at least 20 years old, 21 years old. If you buy a 96, which is the last year of the C4, so which is what mine is, the 96. So you're buying a car that's at least 21 years old. Get it looked over. If you decide not to fix anything, or you just prioritize one issue over another, I get it. But definitely get it looked over so you know exactly what you're dealing with, and you know exactly to get it to a place of where you're going to be comfortable with it, how much it's actually going to cost you. And that's what I'm going to do. So one of the things I really want to do is I want to go to, and I'm going to do this, hopefully I'll go there a few times because I've heard great things, but Doug Rippey Motorsports is a local shop. And Doug Rippey is a famous Corvette racer, for those who don't know. So he's got a shop in northern Minnesota that I'm going to go check out, hopefully soon before the end of the season, before I have to put the C4 up for the winter. But that's the plan, have them look over it, and ultimately let me know what issues I'm dealing with, what's going on. I mean, I realized I could take it to a regular, just a regular car shop, but I figured, let me go to kind of a Corvette specialist shop. I just think that would be more fun. I think it'd be better, I think for the channel and ultimately for me. I mean, I think it would be great to go and visit Doug Rippey and, visit the shop and get the story, because again, for me, having a car like this is really about the story. It's not about, just the car for the sake of having the car, because the fact of the matter is people buy cars all the time and they don't really appreciate the car or care about the story behind the car. They're just buying the car for the sake of the badge or for the sake of the brand name. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, right, to each his or her own, right? But for me, that's what why do we make YouTube videos, right? It's because we want to share the passion, we want to share the story of whatever particular car that we are driving and that we are experiencing with the rest of the community. And so that's what really bothers me when I think about people like Kardashians or people like, just whatever kind of celebrity or whatever kind of, person who has the means, who just buys a car without really appreciating everything that went into that car. It's kind of like, okay, I mean, I respect it. You're successful, you've achieved in life, and therefore now you're able to buy this car, but it's just not as cool, It's like, come on, man, you really know, appreciating things like a hand-built sports car, or an AMG motor, the hand-built AMG motors and things like that. Those types of things where they put their signature, they've got the signature on a nameplate on the motor. Those kind of things, to me, that's really cool. visiting. I have one of my buddies. He's really interested in buying a Porsche, and one of the things that he wants to do, and I think would be really cool, is to go to the Porsche factory in Atlanta. I think that would be awesome. Long-term goal, but would love to get over to Germany. Love to get over to Italy. Visit. The Italian automakers. Let's go visit Ferrari. Let's go visit Lamborghini. I would love to go and see where they build Aston Martins, and in the UK. I mean, that would be awesome. And then also getting back to Germany. Getting on the Autobahn, of course. So things like that would be really, really cool. So just some ideas that I thought of. Some of them are pretty lofty goals, right? I mean, it's not like you can, if you're me and you've got a family, you can't just get on a plane and run over to Germany and jump on the Autobahn. But definitely, planning a trip like that will be awesome. And I'm sure I probably will do that at some point in the future. Because my wife does like to travel, and she likes to travel internationally. And so I think we could definitely turn that into some kind of a vacation / automotive exploration trip. And then also in the Twin Cities, we have the Twin Cities Auto Show, which when you compare it to like the LA Auto Show, right, or the Detroit Auto Show, or the New York Auto Show, it's nothing. It can't hold a candle to those auto shows. So I'd like to get out to one of those auto shows in the future, and really, when they reveal brand new anticipated vehicles, things like that would be awesome. Now, one year, I think it was, I don't know what year it was, but when the Audi R8 first came out, they actually did bring one to the Twin Cities Auto Show. So we actually were one of the first places to get a live, a real R8 at our show, which is awesome. Because usually it's like, okay, a year later, now that car finally shows up at the show, and it's like, okay, we've heard about this car for the whole year, so it's not as cool that you finally brought it here. So that was cool. So things like that I'm really interested in. So another topic that I wanted to get into today, which I think is really important, is what is the purpose? What ultimately makes a car guy a car guy? Is it the fact that he's a gearhead? Is it the fact that he's he's always researching cars on the internet? I should say he or she, because you can be a car gal. Plenty of those out there. Not trying to discriminate. But what makes them a car person, And I think there's really different definitions. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that, because, I think about myself. I'm always, I happen to be an IT person as well, so I'm always around some kind of technology device. So from that perspective, am I wrenching on my car all the time? No. And have I grown up wrenching on cars? No, I haven't. My dad, I don't come from a situation where like my dad was really into cars. My dad really doesn't care too much about cars, our family, we're a Camry family. Everybody had a Camry. My sister has a Camry. My parents still have a Camry. When we ended up having a minivan, because I'm the oldest of four, we had a Toyota Previa van, a mid-engine van. And I don't think my parents knew about that or cared. I think they knew about it just based on, when there was an issue with the car, and then, the mechanic brought them into the shop. Hey, this is the issue. Wait, isn't the engine supposed to be in the front? Well, technically it is in the front, but it's kind of underneath the seat. That's why. So things like that. Which, interesting fact, I actually took my driver's test on that Previa van. It was pretty hilarious. So anyway, so what makes somebody a car person? I really think that definition is fairly broad. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what's great about it, And I guess now that I think about it, what I'm saying sounds a little bit contradictory, because I just talked about how people just buy cars for the brand name. But I think for me, it's really about do you know what you're buying? Really, maybe that's kind of the point I'm trying to get to is, do you know what you're buying, and can you appreciate the engineering and the thought behind what you're buying? Are you just buying it to let everybody know that you have it, or do you really appreciate for yourself, the fact that when you're buying a Lamborghini, what the significance of that means? Why did you buy an Aventador, which by the way is one of my dream cars, versus Huracan, right? Why did you buy that? Why did you buy a Ferrari California? Why did you decide to go a little bit old school and try to go find a Diablo, or a Murcielago or something like that? Why did you do that? So that's kind of my thing, is the significance of those cars, the quirks about those cars, and do you appreciate it? And I think that's really ultimately what makes a car person is just their appreciation. They're not just kind of, okay, I need some transportation. Oh, I can afford it, so I'll just buy a Ferrari. Yeah, that's cool. But a real car person, if they engage you in conversation and you're like, oh yeah, I don't know anything about this car, but it looks cool and it's fast. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of cars that look cool and they're fast that are a lot cheaper than how much you spent on this exotic sports car, right? I mean, we're happy for you, but it's kind of like, oh man, I wish somebody who bought that who really appreciated it. You want people to appreciate. So I can relate to that. So I don't know. I would like to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you think makes a car person, and what makes them not a car person? And is there really a right or wrong answer? Can you really define what it means to be a car person? I don't know that you can. I think you can, and but I think that you do need to be careful with your definition. And my definition really is, it comes down to the appreciation. Do you really appreciate the vehicle that you currently have, or the vehicle that you want? Maybe you don't have it. Like I said, my dream car is a Lamborghini Aventador Super Veloce. And when I think about how much that car costs, I mean, that car costs $400,000. And if I buy a Lamborghini Huracan, talking about it like I can afford it right now, of course, but if I go buy that car, it's like, well, that car is half the price almost, a little bit over half the price, and it's nearly as fast, right? But I don't know, there's always been something about the Aventador that's just stood out to me. I mean, just the way it looks, like futuristic, like a fighter jet. I love that look. I just love how low to the ground it is, how aggressive it is. I just love that look. And I think, to me, the Huracan is like, this car makes sense. Why would you go buy an Aventador? This car makes sense. And I think that's maybe why I like the Aventador so much, because it's like, this car doesn't make sense. It's $400,000. It's really fast. But there's a lot of cars that are really fast nowadays. In 2017, everybody's making cars that are really fast. But this car is just one of those cars that, when you see it, you know it. And when you get in it, you feel like, wow, I'm driving something special. And that's not to say that a Huracan or something else from that fleet is not special, but it's just not, in my opinion, on the same level as an Aventador. So, as you can tell, I'm pretty biased. I have my opinions, but yeah, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. What is it? What is your dream car, and what do you appreciate about it? What's your niche? And I have an appreciation really for pretty much every kind of car. I mean, I love classic muscle cars. Your Plymouth Superbirds and your '68 Camaros and your Daytonas and those kind of cars I really like, as well as all the modern stuff. I'm good, and I even like the fast SUVs. Your SRT8 Grand Cherokees and your what other fast SUVs are there nowadays? The Porsche Cayenne Turbo, which, by the way, I mean, the early 2000s one, I know, whose channel is it? Hoovie's Garage, who's got that like a 2005, 2006 Cayenne Turbo. I mean, that car is absolutely a rocket, and if you can get a really good deal on one because they were prone to have a lot of issues in that generation, I mean you got a rocket of a car that also makes sense to take to the grocery store. So appreciation for all kinds of cars. So we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments of what it means to be a car person, and what is your dream car. And maybe there's different levels of dream cars. I mean, for me, would I call this C4 a dream car? Not necessarily. But it definitely is a car that it represents how I view cars. I view it as what I'll get into in another video as an all-the-way kind of a car. It's a vehicle that, and what I mean by all the way is the manufacturer's intent in building the car was, this is a car that is meant to be appreciated a certain way. It's not a car that has to do double duty as a grocery getter, or as a car that people take to Home Depot and things like that. It's meant to be driven, enjoy it at an autocross, put on the track. It's meant to be driven a certain way. It's meant to be experienced a certain way. And that's why I call it an all-the-way car, because it's like, this is the way we want you to treat this car. We don't want you, if you want to put groceries in it, sure. We'll help you with that. We'll here's a hatchback, But ultimately, we've designed this car to be fast, to handle well, to function a certain way, and that's its primary function. And if you enjoy it in other ways, we'll absolutely support that, and we'll throw in some convenience features, but ultimately that's what this car is about. And that's what I like about this car. And that's what I like about most cars that are in this category, is they make no bones about what they are and what their purpose is. And that's why I like that. So I think every car person at some point in their life, when it makes sense for them, needs to have at least one all-the-way car. You got to have one car that it's like, okay, I'm not buying this for the kids. I'm not buying this for date night. I'm buying this. I mean, if it fits those things, sure. But ultimately, this is an all-the-way car. I'm just driving this car because, man, it's awesome. And that's what I like about the C4, Corvette, and any kind of a sports car that fits that category. Any of the Corvettes, Camaros, which I guess those are reasonable too, in terms of interior space. But I mean, if you buy a Porsche, if you buy, any kind of a convertible or anything like that, it's like those cars, I mean, how practical are they? But they're meant for really one thing, and that's just the driver to enjoy what he's driving, what he or she is driving. So that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Sound off in the comments what you think about what it means to be a car person, and what kind of car would fit that criteria. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a blessed day.